Hey guys, it's Kara. Welcome back to my channel. So today I will be doing a tier ranking video, and it's not the Colleen Hoover one. This is me tier ranking book series that I own. I really love tier rankings. Like, honestly, I am obsessed with everything about them. I watched a bunch of the videos. I love making them. I love doing them. And honestly, I do it all the time. Like, on my notes app, I rank everything that I like Glee, books, Marvel, like everything. So I wanted to do one that was separate from the Colleen Hoover one because I just like doing tier ranking videos. And I think this will be fun because I have a lot of series here and I do love most of them, but there are also some that I have a lot to say, especially after years of thinking about how I feel about these books. My opinions have changed over time. So I'm excited to just do this, and I just want to get started. So let's get into it. So here we have a couple of tiers, and I'm going to go through them real quick. So the first one is An Absolute Slay. That is like the best of the best, my top favorites, 5 out of 5 or like 4.75, like just really high ranked books for me. I would reread them. I would love to recommend them to everybody. They're like my personal favorites, and just really like I really love them. Like, that's like strong love. And then we have Understood the Assignment. Those are books that they did what they needed to do. They were good, and I would totally recommend them. I would maybe reread them. They were really good, but they're not my top favorites. They're just pretty good, and they're still a part of that list of books that are go-to books to recommend. They're just not my top favorites. And then I have Would Recommend. Those are books that I would still recommend, but they're not my favorite books. I just could see them being other people's favorite books. And then we have which is like, it was okay. It's not really worth my time to ever revisit it again or recommend it. It was fine. And then we just have No. That's just like an automatic no for me. Like a no book. Like, I don't want to talk about it again. I don't want to read it again. That's like in the trash. But yeah, those are all the tiers, and let's just get started because there are a lot of books or book series that I have read and I own, and I didn't even realize it until I put it all out on this ranking. All right, so the first one on here is the Harbinger series, but it's not the right size, so I'm gonna skip it and go to it when we find it the second time. So I'm gonna start with the Rosewood Chronicles series. That is going in Understood the Assignment. Oh, there we go. It is an Understood the Assignment. I think it's really good. It's honestly so underrated. It's like royalty based. It's like a queer romance, and it's very adventurous, and it's not really fantasy, but at the same time it kind of is, and it's like the perfect balance for me, which is why I liked it so much. And I haven't read the last 2 books, but I'm excited to read them because I honestly love these characters. I love the plot. The story is so fascinating. So I'm really excited for that one. So next up we have the Series of Unfortunate Events, and that I will put in Understood the Assignment as well. It's one of my favorite series. It's so good. And honestly, it's another underrated one, even though there's a movie and show about it. Every time I talk about this series or hear about this series, people don't like it. And it's one of the series that kind of like got me into the genre of whatever genre this is. It's one of the series that really got me into YA almost. It's not really YA, but it's kind of like a YA series, and I really like how it was written. It's really unique to have a story just have a lot of like negative parts to it, and they have to try to find a way to see the good in it and to see how they can get out of the situation. And the fact that it dragged on for 13 books and was still interesting says a lot. So definitely recommend this one. Really good. Okay, next we have The Princess Diaries. For me, that's going in absolute slay. I love this series. This is actually probably the actual series that got me into YA. This I read kind of early on, but it was just that series for me. It was so good. I kind of related to Mia at times, although other times she was absolutely horrible. But for the most part, this was my series. It's better than the movies for sure. I honestly think if you like the movies, you should read the books, because even though they're a little bit different, they're different in a good way. Next up is the Infernal Devices series, and that I would put in Understood the Assignment. I think it was good, but it's kind of like in between Would Recommend and Understood the Assignment, because I like the characters a lot. The plot is kind of like forgettable a little bit to me. Like, I kind of forgot what happened. But when I think about the love triangle and how well it was done, like, I loved both Jem and Will in the situation. And honestly, even though I was team Will, I wouldn't have been upset at any outcome. Like, both outcomes were good. Like, I honestly like all of it. All of the characters were great, except for the villains, of course. And I think I would recommend it. I feel like I would reread it too, so I'm gonna leave it in Understood the Assignment for now, but that might change, so I don't know. But for now, it's in Understood the Assignment. So next up, we have the Hopeless series, and I'm including Hopeless, Losing Hope, Finding Cinderella, All Your Perfects, and Finding Perfect as that series. I don't know. Like, ethically, I think it goes in Would Recommend, because I would recommend it, but there are some topics in the first two books and the plot twist that has me thinking, like, it literally tore my heart apart, and I don't know, like, for sure if I would recommend it, which is why I put it a little lower, because for me, it's again like Infernal Devices, where it's in between the two. All Your Perfects and Finding Perfect are perfect. Like they say in the title, they're literally perfect. The other three have their flaws, and there are things I want to talk about in the Colleen Hoover ranking, so I'm going to leave it at that. But for now, just thinking about what it's about and the plot twist and how triggering that could be, I would put it in the middle tier, just because I would recommend, but I'd be really hesitant to recommend it. Next up, we have the Love and Other Detours series. So that's Love and Gelato, Love and Luck, and Love and Olives. I would put that in Understood the Assignment. And it would, nope. Understood the Assignment. And it would be in an absolute slay if Love and Luck was better, but Love and Luck was kind of like the throwaway book for me. And honestly, that happens a lot when I read series. Like, the second book is always like a book that you have to read to get to the next part, like the big part. And that was kind of what it was giving for me. So that's why I put it in Understood the Assignment, because the first and the last one completely understood the assignment, loved it. But the second one was kind of like a book where I was a little bit annoyed. I didn't really care for the characters or the plot. And I don't like books where they're stuck like in a car for so long. It gets boring. I feel like that was a big part of the book. And the traveling summer vibes were not there for me. So I would put it in Understood the Assignment. Still recommend, but Love and Luck is like the more mediocre one of the three. Okay, next up is Heartstopper. Nobody should be surprised by this, but, you know, I'll keep talking about it on my account. Heartstopper is absolute slay, top favorite. Honestly, it's literally perfect. Like, I can't see how anybody could find flaws in this series. It's like a really healthy relationship. They're really cute from the start. And I just feel like it's a really good series for self-discovery. The characters are relatable in different ways. Like, all of them are different, but they're all relatable. And I like that about the series a lot. Like, and I could read these over and over and over and never get tired of them. Like, I've read them 5 times, all 4 books. And I'm gonna keep doing it because they're so good. Like, I honestly love them so much. I think there are some people who don't like graphic novels, but everybody should give this a chance because it's better than the show. It's honestly really cute and just makes your heart really warm. It's just so good. So good. I love it. Next we have the Blood and Ash series. This is kind of an interesting one because I would have probably put it in an absolute slay if it was just the first 2 books. But now that we're at the 3rd book and A Shadow in the Ember, the prequel book, I'm kind of like, okay. Well, and also I don't know if I would say I understood the assignment because the books are like 600 pages long and they just don't get to the point very well. So I would put it in would recommend. The world building was okay. Would recommend. The world building was fine in the first book, but then it just started to get a bit too complicated for me. And so I don't know, like I feel like I have to keep rereading the books every time the next book comes out. And so that's kind of frustrating. Like if you can't follow along very easily, then it kind of gets annoying. I'm gonna read the War of Two Queens this month. So I'm really excited and I hope it's better. I've heard really bad things about it, but also by Bookstagram friends, they've loved it. So I'm excited to see it. I hope that it's better than the other ones or worth the hype that they're giving me. I hope it's still working because I'm starting to get a little bit tired of the series and it's kind of reminding me of the reasons why I don't like fantasy books. So let's hope that turns around soon. Next, we have the Selection series. If we were just thinking about the first 3 books, then I would put it in Understood the Assignment. And so that's what I'm going to do because the last 2 books, they're kind of like, not really. They're in the series, but they're not really. I hated the main character in the second 2, like the last 2 books. So I'm just going to forget it happened. And the first 3 books were literally everything to me in middle school. They really started my love of young adult books. Like, I said that about A Series of Unfortunate Events and The Princess Diaries, and they kind of did because I felt like they were a little bit more YA than middle grade, even though they were classified under middle grade. But it was the selection that really started it for me, so I appreciate it a lot for what it did, and I would put it in Understood the Assignment because it has that fast-paced, great dystopian, great romance, royalty vibes, and it's just like that series. Like, I really hope they actually make the movie because they've been saying that for like 2-3 years now. It's time to make the movie. I really want to see what they do with it. I want to see my young adult heart just be so happy with the movie. So let's just hope that it comes out soon. Next we have the Origin series, and I had previously given the first 2 books, which are the only ones I've read. There's a 3rd one and a 4th one coming out who knows when. I read the first 2 and I gave them 4 stars, but it was only because I kind of felt bad because I know a lot of people love it. But for me, it was like an eh. Like, honestly, looking back, the Lux series, which is like the prequel series to the Origin series, it's better. I honestly like it better, and I like the characters in that more. In the Origin series, I'm kind of like, don't really care for the main character. I love Luke, who was in the Lux series, but I honestly think that it's kind of lackluster, and it's also by Jennifer L. Armentrout, like from Blood and Ashes. It kind of falls under the same like issues that I had with from Blood and Ash, where like the explaining, like it's just not interesting, and it's a lot of explaining, and I feel like it can get a little bit tiring, so I'll put it in for now. Next we have the Off Campus series by Elle Kennedy, and I am actually wearing a merch of it. It's not her official merch. I should have waited until she released it, but I think it was because she had seen all the fake ones like this, that people were making, so she decided to make her own. This is my Bragg University. Very cheap, obviously, because you can see that the black letters are like faded. But anyway, the deal is really, really good. It's 5 stars for me, but the rest of the series was kind of like, eh. So I would put it in would recommend. I think they're quick reads. I would recommend them. Love the hockey romance vibe, the concept. I didn't love all the guys all the time. Like, sometimes they did things that were questionable. So it's a little bit like, for me. But I would recommend it. I do love sort of how the found family is in the series. I loved all the girls, and I think, well, I don't even love all the girls. It's kind of like an up and down with this series. I would definitely recommend The Deal. I would put that in an absolute slay on its own. And I would say just read the first book and just, that's it. Because honestly, that's the best one in all the series. The Off-Campus series and the Briar U series. The Briar U is like a spinoff to it. Also not as good. The Deal, the very first book out of both of the series, is the best of the best. Just read that and you'll be fine, honestly. Okay, next we have the Real Friends series. I would put it in Understood the Assignment. I feel like it hits too close to home sometimes with the whole friendship drama. I know how that feels, and I honestly avoid it a lot, or try to avoid it a lot. But I think that the way it was written or like drawn, because these are graphic novels, I think the way that it was portrayed was really good. And just thinking about it, I'm like, I think that it's a good series to recommend to people who kind of feel that same way about friendships. And also, it's kind of based off of the author's real life. So that's pretty cool. And I think that it felt real, even though it was like a children's series. So honestly, I'd recommend it for all ages. I love it. Okay, next we have Shatter Me. That is immediately an absolute slay. So, so good. It's my favorite series ever. Right in front of Heartstopper. Heartstopper goes second, even though Shatter Me, not all of the books are 5 stars. It is like a 5-star vibes, 5-star as a whole. I love everything about it. I love the romance. I love the love triangle. I love the plot. It's so fast-paced. There are like plot twists even. And when I first read this during the pandemic, it just changed me forever. And Taddei Mafi, is probably my favorite author. I thought it was Colleen Hoover, but now that I'm reading more for other books, which I only have 4 left, by the way, only 4 left. Now that I've read all her other books, it's kind of like Taddei Mafi is better because I have more favorites, even though she has fewer books. It's kind of like hard to decide, but I digress. Shatter Me, so, so good. Honestly, the best I've ever read, and I don't think anything can top Shatter Me for me. Next, we have American Royals, and I would put it in would recommend. I think I gave it higher ratings than the Real Friends series, but just thinking about how the characters are, I'm kind of like, I would recommend it, but sometimes I get kind of frustrated and tired of the consistent, repetitive plot line that goes throughout all 3 series. The romance drama has not changed, and we're on book 3. So it's time to wrap it up, you know? So, like, I do enjoy it, and it reminds me a lot of Gossip Girl, but it's not the best ever, you know? It's kind of like, you know, like, I expect a little more for the 4th book, but hopefully it does pick up, get better, and move on to a new plot, something more centered around Beatrice and her relationship and all of that. Next we have the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I only have the first and the last book. I would put it in overall. it's been told that it's problematic, which I didn't notice in the beginning. But even if I hadn't, it wasn't my favorite. It was like not the best. I only have the ones that I liked. So, and that's only 2 of the books. So that's why I'm kind of like, nothing much to say. Just I felt like it was kind of boring. I didn't really care about the characters. I cared about some of them. And at the time, I kind of did feel the found family vibes. But then looking back, I'm just like, it's okay. It's not my favorite ever, but it's all right. Next, we have Percy Jackson. That one is would recommend. Actually, I'll put it in understood the assignment because I gave them pretty high ratings. No, I'm going to move it back down to would recommend because I think that if I had read it when I was younger, it would have been a different feeling, just like The Land of Stories. The Land of Stories was that for me. And wait, where is The Land of Stories? Oh my gosh. Okay, all fixed. Land of Stories is on here. But as I was saying, like The Land of Stories, where I read it when I was younger, and I learned to like it because of that childhood nostalgic vibe it had to be that way for Percy Jackson. But I do think that it's good and I would recommend it. It's just not my favorite ever. It's really good. I just feel like there was that nostalgia part missing. After all the hype that I got from it, I realized that the hype was because of the nostalgia as well as it being good, but I just got the it being good part. So for me, that's why it's in would recommend, but not like understood the assignment. Next we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. That is an absolute slay. Not a doubt about it. Honestly, who's doing it like Holly Jackson? She needs to make another mystery book or series. Like, it was so good. Like, honestly, no notes. Had me on the edge of my seat. I still predicted all the endings, but not in a bad way. It was kind of like oh, I got it. Like, I'm surprised because it was like whack endings, but like in the best way. So honestly, I love it, and I would recommend it for sure. And then we have One of Us is Lying. That would go in for me. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think the first one was fine, but then after I think about like all the hype it got, I was kind of like, And also my friend spoiled the ending for me, and that ruined the entire book. Just to let you guys know, you do not want to know the ending of this book. You want to be able to figure it out for yourself. Some people say it's predictable, but most people say it's very shocking, and I would agree. If I hadn't known, then it would have probably made this book a lot better, but no. This always happens to me. I always get spoiled things, but that kind of messed it up for me. And then the second book, I had given a 4.5 at the time because the plot twist was so big, but now looking back, the rest of the book wasn't that good. So it actually, as a book duology, it goes in or I guess it's gonna have a third book, I heard, but for now it's in So next we have the March series, and I would put it in would recommend. I think it offers a different perspective of the Black experience, and I think it's a good series to read because it was actually partly created by John Lewis himself, and he was actually there during the Civil Rights Movement. So I think it's the one. I think everybody should read it at least once. Not my favorite graphic novel series in the world, but it is important to read. I think it's like necessary to read. Next we have the Tale of Magic series, and I would put it in understood the assignment. It's so good. It's like the prequel series to The Land of Stories, but it came after. I honestly love everything about it. I think it does a really good job at capturing how everything came to be. And it's just like the other Chris Colfer books where you just can't put it down. It's just so entertaining. and you just gotta keep reading. So it's Understood the Assignment. Not as good as Land of Stories, and that's probably why it's there, because I kept comparing it, but it was good. Okay, so next we have Did I Mention I Love You? I would put it in Understood the Assignment. It's a guilty pleasure read for me. I honestly loved it, and it's a little bit weird. The trope is a little bit weird. So I just don't recommend it to anybody. But even though I don't recommend it to anybody, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't if I couldn't, if that makes any sense. I put it in Understood the Assignment. I think I gave all the books 5 stars. Now that I think about it. Well, the first one was 4, but the others were 5. I loved it a lot. So yeah, I honestly think it's really good. So and then we have Babysitter's Club. I would say would recommend, or actually Understood the Assignment, because it can't be below the Real Friends series. It's better than the Real Friends series. The show is really, really well done. I love the show a lot. And it sucks that they canceled it after 2 seasons. Like, I'm still so angry at Netflix for that. But at least they're continuing to make the Babysitter's Club graphic novels, because it's so good, and I think it's good for any age. It really has this vibe to it that it's kind of like a found family, actually, now that I think about it, because those girls are not related by blood, but they're related because of this common interest they have, and they hang out and everything. Like, it's really sweet, and I really like it, honestly. Then we have Dork Diaries, which in the past I would have put it in Understood the Assignment just because I'm older now, but I'm gonna unironically put it in An Absolute Slay. I think that if I picked up one right now and reread it, it would have that same effect on me. It would be so good, and I would love everything about it because it's Dork Diaries, you know? It's just that for me. So I honestly love it, and I really hope that the 12th book comes out soon, and I also hope that Rachel Renee Russell makes like a young adult version where she goes to high school, because how cool would that be? Like, we need like a version for the girls who grew up with it and are now the age where she can continue the series. So I put it in Absolute Slay. If I could do a readathon right now of all the books, I would, but I don't think that many people want that, so I'm going to kind of refrain unless any of you guys in the comments want to yell at me to do a readathon of Dork Diaries. Then we have So All the Boys I Loved Before. I would say would recommend. I think the books are pretty decent, but I like the first movie better than the first book. And the other 2 movies and books are kind of similar, or the movies are better. I don't really know. It's just like not the best series ever for me. Like, I like the first one a lot, and I relate to her as a character. Like, she's one of my favorite characters of all time and most relatable ones. But the series was kind of iffy for me, and Peter wasn't as likable. Peter's like the Conrad from Summer I Turned Pretty of this series. It's by the same author, and I just feel like they have similar vibes where, like, they just, in the books, they don't say anything interesting that would make me root for them at times. And then, like, in the movie or the adaptation, I root for them. So it's just maybe the way it's written that sometimes doesn't get me. But yeah, that's why I put it in would recommend. Then we have Six of Crows. I would put it in because I would put it in would recommend. I do love the characters. I love the found family relationship that they have, but it's kind of, the plot is like really forgettable. I don't really care about the plot, so it's kind of hard for me to feel like very strongly about it at all. So it's just in would recommend. Then we have School for Good and Evil, and I would put that in Understood the Assignment. I read the first 3 books. They were so good. I was so obsessed with them now that I think about it. And it's time to revisit it because the first movie is coming out this year, and I feel like this is a good series to get back into fantasy. So when it comes out, I'll start to read it, and maybe I'll just read the whole series since I have them anyway and I haven't finished them. Actually read all the books on my physical TBR. That would be great. So yes, I did like School for Good and Evil. It understood the assignment. Okay, next we have Storm and Fury, for real this time, from the Harbinger series. I would put it in would recommend. I just remember the way I felt when I read them. They were so good, and they're one of those fantasy series that I think about and I'm like, yeah, I do like fantasy. You know, like, it's another Jennifer L. Armentrout series, but honestly, Jennifer L. Armentrout writes fun relationships and characters, and even though the way that the world is explained isn't always interesting or perfect, I can overlook it sometimes. And with the Harbinger series, it's well done. I really liked Harbinger. Honestly, no notes except for like maybe plot points being less slow. Because the second book was like 3 stars for me. The other 2 were good though. So I don't know. I liked it. It's kind of a comfort series for me. Storm and Fury is good. Then we have Maybe Someday. I would put it in no. Okay, let's move on. Then we have The Tale of Emily Winsnap. I would put it in eh. This was like a childhood series, and when I read the first book, I liked it a lot, but then the second book, I can't remember how it continued. Then I asked for like all the rest and just never read them because they just didn't do much for me, and then I had started to grow out of it at the time. So it just kind of goes there because it didn't really do anything for me. Next we have Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I would put it in would recommend. I think they're funny and they're kind of like Dork Diaries. It's really fun to just read through and keep reading. But for me, it's a little bit like annoying sometimes because the main character, Greg, is so rude and mean sometimes. I'm like, are we supposed to be rooting for him at all? He just doesn't have those good qualities, and then it makes me consider not really liking the series. So I put it in would recommend. But I am unhauling the first book. Maybe it's because it's not my favorite and it doesn't necessarily deserve a spot on the bookshelf. So yeah, that's where it goes for me. Next we have Max Crumbly. That goes in eh. It's basically the Diary of a Wimpy Kid that Rachel Renee Russell tried to do. It's like the guy's version of Dork Diaries, but also the Diary of a Wimpy Kid knockoff. And I just feel like it could have been better. I didn't really care for Max. And I usually read all of Rachel Renee Russell's books, but I think the third one came out and I just never read it because it just didn't do much for me. So that's why it goes there. I just hope she keeps writing for Dork Diaries because that's the series that matters. I'm telling you. Then we have Gossip Girl. Gossip Girl goes in eh. I think it was my fault for watching the show first, but the show was a lot better. And Gossip Girl books, they changed like the entire storyline. Like everybody is different. Like this person's with this person instead of the person that they're with in the show. And it's just too many changes for my brain to handle. So, not for me. Then we have Out of the Lost. That goes in eh. I kept reading the books and asking for them, but thinking about it now, I'm like, I don't know why I did that because it's not something I think about at all. I kind of forgot it existed until I looked around the room at all the series that I own and I've read. So it's kind of like it had a special place in my heart at a time, but now it's not there. So yeah. Then we have Divergent. That goes in because the first book was good. The first book goes in would recommend. but the second and the third go in eh. So overall, I'm gonna just put it in eh because there are more. It was also a staple for me. It really transformed my idea of dystopian books because I read The Selection before, but for me, that was more for the romance at the time. And then I also read this other book I had to read for school, and it was also dystopian, and it was good, but it didn't really do it. Divergent did it for me, and I watched the movies. First movie was fine, the other two were not good. I feel like this was like an era for everybody at one point, but looking back, it wasn't the most impressive book ever, or book series ever. Then we have Shadow and Bone, or the Grishaverse, and I guess it would go in maybe. And that's only for Nikolai, to be honest. Nikolai is the best part of the series. Everything else would be a no. But Nikolai really made the series what it is, and I stand by that. So that's why it's going there for me. I think it had a lot of potential, but I don't understand why people root for the Darkling and Alina at all. And it wasn't my favorite, so that's why I'm the only one on planet Earth who has still not seen the show. And yeah, it's an eh for me. Then we have A Curse So Dark and Lonely. I forget the name of the actual series, but I would put it in would recommend. I actually only read that first book, so I don't know what the others are like, but I heard that it wasn't the best, so I just decided to DNF the series because as much as I would recommend this book, I don't love it so much that I'm like, I need to read it. I need to read the rest. It's kind of like it was good and move on type thing. And then we have Until Friday Night. That's the Friday, there's a name of it. I forgot the name. Oh, Field Party. This is the Field Party series. I would put it in Understood the Assignment. I loved it. Oop. I loved it. Oh my gosh. How do you spell it? Yes. There we go. I loved it. Every book follows a different character and a different girl that they're with and alternates perspectives. And they're all dealing with something tragic or dark. It's kind of interesting that it could be young adult but still convey the message. And I like that about it. It wasn't so dark that you can't read it, but it was dark enough that it was heartbreaking and it really makes you feel for the characters. So yeah, honestly, this is great. I love it. And then we have Throne of Glass. I would put it in would recommend. I did DNF the series halfway through, or like a little over halfway through, but that's just because at the time I was burnt out from fantasy. I think that is the reason why I stopped reading so much fantasy. I think it was actually around that time I read Queen of Shadows, and then I just stopped, and I started reading books that Nicole Lano, if any of you know her, I started reading books that she recommended, and then I loved like most of them. So I was like, you know what, this is for me. Went back to romance, and now I'm kind of stuck, and I guess it shouldn't matter because you should be able to read whatever you want to read. But I do like fantasy, and I think that if I choose a good book, I can get back into fantasy. So that's why I put it there, because I would recommend it for fantasy lovers, but it's just really long. So I kind of got bored of it after a while. So that's just why I put it in the middle tier. Would recommend. Not my favorite thing in the world, though. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below any other book video ideas you would like to see from me. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.